Welcome, everybody. This is the spiral dynamics and overview. This is a very basic overview of spiral dynamics, but we'll be going into that in just a moment. So, intro and learning objectives. So, hello, my name is Darcy Rain. I'm a knighting counselor at the Jedi Conclave. By the end of this class, I'm hoping that you'll have an understanding of what spiral dynamics is, so that you can also identify your current development as a Jedi through this model. That's not the direction I wanted to go. There we go. So, what is spiral dynamics? Spiral dynamics is a measuring rod of development. It can be used to measure where an individual or a society is on an evolutionary scale. So, this can be applied both internally and externally. So, you can measure just yourself through this model, or you can measure society as a whole through this model. And I will be going through each one of the stages of this, and you will be able to identify where you are, even where your own like society, group of friends, etc., is on this model. This model has been developed through many years and has evolved through many, many hands. This is why I like this model, is because it has changed over the time. It continues to evolve personally, and it has even changed since the time that I last studied it myself while I was researching it for this. Personally, my favorite developer is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Um, he's also the guy, the main guy for like flow theory, like the flow state and all that. This is a model that he helped develop as well. So when I studied this, there was only 8 stages, and now there are 9 stages, um, which was really cool to hear about. But we'll go through that. So this is just an overview. This is going to be very grassroots basic. If you want to go into this further, there is a series on spiral dynamics by actualize.org. It's on YouTube. They are very long. Like each one of the stages is like roughly like 2.5 hours. So you will do that for a while, but if you don't want to, this overview might help in the large scale. So on to the first stage. Stage one, beige. Each stage has a color and also has a defining attributes put to it. So stage one, beige, which is instinctive. This is the first stage and is the automatic starting point. You can't skip this. No one skips this point because the primary occupiers of the stage are actual infants. It is centered around self and satisfaction. It has little to no impact on the world around them and acts purely on instinct. So the example I've provided here is a baby cries, signals its mother to come feed it. It's not because it misses the mother, like when it's like an infant. It really isn't aware of anything beyond its own needs. It's going, I'm cold, I'm hungry, I'm scared. It's not aware of others. It's just acting in the way it needs to do in order to survive. No one teaches the baby to cry for attention. In fact, most babies are born crying because going, oh God, it's cold out here. I want to go back to where it's warm. It knows that it knows it cries for attention. It knows, and that knowing is reinforced in the actions of a higher intelligence. It's not really aware of the cause and effect. It just knows that the cause happens. So are you here? I hope not. If you're at this stage, you probably don't even know what I'm saying. You're probably not even aware that there's a computer monitor in front of you. It's really like it's focused on the self. As we go through this, you're going to notice that the stages fluctuate from internal to external to selfish to selfless. So stage one is selfish. It's not in a bad way. It's literally because they are not aware fully of anyone else around them. I would like to go to the next stage, please. There we go. Stage two, purple. So this one is clan based. Um, this stage is where the individual begins to understand that the world isn't just themselves and their immediate needs. They begin to recognize their tribe and the importance of these people in their lives. This section is mostly occupied by older infants and toddlers, but is not limited to them. Um, the way I would describe this is well, clans. If you look at like native tribes and all that, they're very like focused on their group. I think like the Northern Sentinelese people of Northern Sentinel Island are a prime example because They don't really want to interact with the outside world. They don't seem to have any desire to want to or want to learn how to like communicate. They're really just cause and effects, but also they don't want, they're like, okay, people got sick when these people came over, so we're not going to let these people back. So this section is very mystic based, where whatever they don't understand is a near otherworldly and scary. So they prefer to stay within their clan. Like if you could imagine yourself as an uncontacted person, you saw a helicopter fly overhead, what would you assume it is? You're not going to assume it's a man-made machine. You could be like, this is something from the gods. It's doesn't make sense. Anything that doesn't really make sense is something that is going to be more mystic based. Uh, an example of somebody in purple stage would be a child hiding behind their parent when presented with a stranger, or crying and running away when presented with like a big old scary mascot that's all big and colory. They're just overwhelmed. They're not sure what it is, so they run back to safety, and their safety is their clan. So are you here? It's possible, but I would hope that anybody in the Jedi community wouldn't want to actually like be in that stage themselves, because it sort of requires a lot of ignorance. Not like in a bad way, but in the fact that they literally don't have anything else to base it off of besides what they've been told. So usually moving forward from the stage is usually quite automatic, but we can see that sometimes uncontacted peoples can often remain in this section. It's not a bad thing. It's just how they go. Society at one point would have been at this stage. So to see society moving forward, we also see people move forward with it. So next stage. Stage 3, red. This one is ego based. As we see, we go from the selfish to the selfless, which is a clan, and then back to selfish, which is themselves. This stage is where one begins to develop their own ego. They begin to understand their sense of self within their group for the first time. But as a result, it is quite fragile. They don't worry about the consequences, and they will fight against perceived slights and limits placed upon them. Um, it's not a surprise that the people that mostly find themselves in here are teenagers and criminals. They're not looking at the long-term issues. They're going, well, I want to do this. I will do this because that's what I want. And anyone saying that I shouldn't do that is just trying to limit who I am. As they develop the sense of self, they demand respect without earning it. They will do things like stealing and lying without worrying about repercussions, but get angry when they're caught. So the example I'm going to give here is a teenager that steals from their parents' wallet, and when confronted and asked why they did it, they answer with, "I don't know," or just straight up anger. They and I this is not an excuse, but it is an explanation. They legitimately don't know why they stole the money. They did it because they wanted something. They're like, I want money so I can go to a movie with my friends, but they don't know why they stole it. It doesn't make sense to them. It's because they're trying to preserve their ego, their face with their friends. But when they get caught, they have to preserve their face with the people that caught them. But they're still like, for this, they're largely acting on instinct. But it's really to benefit themselves, even if it comes at the expense of others. So, are you here? It's possible. I know many people that are there. If you value your own comfort at the expense of others, you're likely here. But if you're a Jedi, this is something that you want to get away from and you want to evolve past because it is very emotional, chaotic, and destructive. It's putting your own needs ahead of everybody else. Damn the consequences, and it can often lead to a lot of like problems down the line. So when do we move forward? Moving forward from this place is hard to measure. I've seen people leave it and then end up returning back to it. Some of these stages, it's not like a progression where you go forward only forward. People do slide backwards if it becomes too uncomfortable. We will go through that in time. Moving forward from this place is hard to measure. Often it comes after being forced to accept the consequences of their actions enough times. The red then learns that they are part of a societal whole and have to act in such a way that they don't find themselves constantly under a form of punishment. You'll see a lot of people like this if such as jail time have given here in order to move forward in their lives. So some people they break the law a lot of times. They end up going to jail, I don't think it's a surprise that when they leave jail, they usually come out as born again Christians or some other religion, because that's actually the next stage. But note, not all people in the penal system are part of this stage. It all depends on the individual. So I'm not saying all criminals are part of red. Some people are there as part of like consequence or just happenstance. There are innocent people in jail. So the next stage, blue, which is purpose-based. Again, this goes back out external to a community selflessness. Um, we begin as we move to the next stage. We go to the stage that most people of this day and age occupy. This and the next stage, or where about like 80 to 90% of people in like first world countries are. So this is where you're going to probably find yourself. Blue is a community-based stage where self-sacrifice, righteousness, and having meaning, often based on external pressures, plays a key part in their lives. We often see the very religious here. This is also a stage where people move forward from, but they can also regress back to during times of extreme stress. Um, the example I'm giving at the bottom here actually covers that, which is a mother that follows a religion to help raise her children. She might have gone off and gone to further stages, and you might recognize that. But when they have a kid, sometimes it's comfortable to slide back into one that you're more attuned with, or a young adult that donates a lot of their time to help spread the message of a sacred document. Now, I've used the word sacred document for a reason. So we'll go back to the second paragraph here. And moving on from red, blue tempers and represses impulsive action and can respond to feelings of true remorse and guilt for their actions. Often, blues often find comfort in their community and in having a purpose. Often near always finding found in a divine plan, often in the form of a document. Controversially, anyone who points to a document such as a fundamental right can also fall into this stage. Um, an example would be hardcore, diehard Second Amendment followers, where they point to the Second Amendment and say, "This is why we're allowed to do this." It's like, okay, but that's a piece of paper, like, or that's just a document. Like, it's too, and they also find community within that. So, are you here? Statistically, many of you are. This is what I would call the first of the comfort stages. So one could be themselves without really much consequence because they realize that there are consequences to their actions, and they also have a society around them, usually in the form of a church, spiritual groups, family, where they have to play within rules and they learn how to play within those rules. So therefore, they often can just go through life without having to realize, without having much issues. So how do we move forward from blue? So this is the first stage where someone could find themselves forced forward. It is very like I was forced forward from blue. One prime example could be found in cults, where questioning the why and to the whats can find themselves alienated or punished not for breaking the rules, but shaking up the established way and questioning the sacred document or person. People that will like question, like go into some of these like extremist religious groups where they might ask questions, even not even extremist groups. I asked a lot of questions when I was in the church, and eventually they were just going, well, it's based on faith, and you need to stop asking questions because everyone's like growing tired of it. And I'm like, okay, well, bye. So moving forward from this community phase, such as a blue phase, pushes someone into the next phase, which is independent based. Again, going back into selfish. This is a pattern that, as I'm hoping you're all seeing, internal, external, selfish, selfless, selfish. And in ways as we move through the spiral. So from this, we can extrapolate that the next phase steps away from the needs of the community and back to the needs of the self to begin to focus on one's own needs, wants, needs, and desires. So the next phase is orange. This is a power-based form. So this is the secondly most occupied stage for most first world people. This is the stage where the individual breaks away from the established purpose and works out to seize their own identity, strength, and power within the systems that be. So basically, like one of the prime examples here would be a capitalist. They achieve power, money, uh, and they realize that with that power, anything they want can be achieved. They get money, they get power, they can change the world, right? So the main difference between red and orange would be that an orange realizes that there's a purpose in having people around them, people that they can trust. In the end of the day, an orange will still throw somebody under the bus to get ahead, but they realize that having their core team, people that they can trust, does actually increase their own power. A company doesn't run off of one person, for example. It doesn't matter how great the idea of the company is, you need a team to help run it. So, an example, a person upon entering the business world begins by collecting their close team, ensuring that they have their trust and can call upon their skills to bolster and complement their own. They're, of course, not beyond gaining those well above them as allies. You'll see like brown nosers and stuff like that, where they're like, I need to suss up to this guy because this person, it's sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. And the orange knows that. Um, as we all know, it's often not what you know, but whom you know that gets you into a position of power. So are you here? Um, Probably. So this is the second and the second stage and the final state of the comfort stages. So you had blue and orange. These are most comfortable, and that's why most people have found themselves here. The mind expands from here. The mind expands beyond themselves and their direct societal circle. So orange wants to change the world so they can have a better life for themselves. Um, Even if they all like rising tides lift all boats, like they want that tide to rise. Um, Sometimes they won't care about consequences. Like they understand there will be consequences, but you'll see they'll try to skirt them by being sneaky about it. You'll see things like sweatshops as an example of that, where to be like, well, I can pay somebody 2p two p to do this, or I could pay somebody local £15 to do this for the exact same job. So how do we move forward? Again, we see that the orange moves towards selfish needs, working to ensure that the self comes first. This isn't, as with many of these stages, except arguable, like red is, I would consider a bad stage, terrible twos, teenagers, criminals, and all that. Most of the Western world is in this blue to orange spectrum. And we see that both the benefits and folly of such a society and the people it builds. We know this world isn't perfect, and it is built within this blue to orange spectrum. So how do we move on from here? What's beyond the capitalist mindset? You would think that the capitalist, being the primary power in the world, would be the mindset that most people should ascribe to be, but it's arguable. How do we move forward from this point? The orange mindset is out of the self, but both blue and orange are limited in scope. They're all about benefiting their direct circle, their church family, their direct family, their close circle of friends, um, and it benefits them and their team. So to move forward and beyond, one must learn to look beyond how it affects themselves and their direct team and see how it affects others, even beyond their circle. So this is why the next stage is quite often shocking and confusing for those holding the blue-orange mindset. From here, the stages become harder and harder to grasp. Um, so to understand this is the next couple of stages. If you're not occupying one of those stages, it can become quite confusing because you'll be like, why would this be the next stage? And it can be quite hard to describe what it would be from somebody behind it. Once you get to it, you're like, oh, now it makes sense. It's the issue is where you are is obviously going to make the most sense to you. And where you've come from would obviously also make sense. Where you're going is still unexplored territory. So what would the next stage be? Stage 6, green, which is empathy based. At this point, the mind moves on to the next phase and deconstructs social constructs, both from within themselves and within society. It's learning more about why their society is the way it is. So who occupies this space? Hippies, light bringers, healers, people that are looking to better the world around them, to live in more like a communal sense on on the basis that everybody is equal. Those that have a deep wish to live in a communal society that push the needs of the individual first. So not just themselves. They're like, I want that person to have as equal right as myself. I want to make sure they have equal access of opportunity, equal access of outcome, and I want to make sure that like they want to make sure that everybody has an equal time there. So they want to ensure that all have enough and can live and love as they will. So it's quite odd. It is quite odd to think that going from like religion to the corporate ladder, the next stage is essentially just a hippie. But it is in the growth of the mind and society that we see putting each other first, ensuring that all have enough rather than the few have the most while others suffer. It's only natural. We want to ensure that our friends and family have enough, but we also want to make sure that the people we see on the streets, like living homeless, like why are they homeless when we have people blasting off the space for fun? It's a disparity that I think a lot of people are waking up to, and why a lot of people are moving to these new age spiritual movements, such as Jedi realism. This is what I'd call the first of the pain stages. So we've been in the comfort stages. Now we're in the pain stages. And I'll go into what the pain stages are in a minute. As such, it is also possible to retreat upwards the spiral away from this. So you can go back to orange and blue. You'll see like example a hippie parent who decides like when once they have kids they're like, oh, I just need like comfort. They move backwards and they find themselves back in blue. Um, and some do when the comfort and stability becomes desirable. But from here, life becomes uncomfortable as it compels the individual to start deconstructing self-society and selfish habits. Um, from here, this stage and beyond, it is going to require like there's no closing yourself off from it. There's no questioning, like there's no like, oh, well, like I believe this, but there's nothing I can do about it. It does require people to continue pushing, and push often and hard, and it's not comfortable. You lose people along the way because it's considered extreme to want people to be equal, apparently. So those that occupy this phase are often find themselves pursuing creating societal change, re-examining their upbringing to ensure it fits in with what both is morally and factually correct to push for a better tomorrow. So how do we move forward from this? This stage suffers at one point. The occupier of this phase will still be growing and as such is victim to their own personal biases, or even the victim of their time suffering from ignorance that hasn't even been made known to them yet. A personal example is my parents are upset with me because they're like, oh, why didn't you ever tell us that you didn't feel like a boy when you were growing up? And I'm like, well, because I didn't feel like a girl, and those were the only two options developed for me. So once I learned the term non-binary and I was able to learn what it meant, I was like, oh, that's me. I was a victim of my time. If I had known what this was when I was 10, probably would have told everyone that's what I was when I was 10. But instead, I had to be who I was until now. Further to that, I'm sorry. Yes, they're typically faster to address it than explain it away with a metaphysical rationale. So when a green comes to knowledge of something, they learn to explain it with like facts and science and all that, rather than try to explain it like, oh, it's part of so and so plan, or like it's part of this like sacred document or whatever. There's they understand that the world is what it is, so therefore, so further to that, Greens tend to believe in a society to be the problem to be solved. So and this is the main issue with Greens, I find, is they'll view society as a problem, but society is too big a concept to tackle all at once. So they are correct. Society is the problem. However, the issue is still within themselves, such as uh, the stereotype of the stoner hippie. They're all peace and love, but they're just stoned out on drugs at a rock concert. Like they believe a lot of things, but it's hard for them to move forward. Greens also suffer with being in a societal stage that can be faked. Unfortunately, the ideas of Greens have moved so much in society that you'll see people faking it. See people that spend insane amount of money to go to Burning Man. You'll see corporate companies like my job recently. They now have a meditation hour once a week. But they put it at a time slot that nobody can make it to because it's right at shift change. So everyone's coming in and everybody wants to leave. They're all tired and or they're dreading coming into work. Um, and I've went to one and it was just the most Mick mindfulness thing ever, where they're just trying to present yourself as the problem that needs to be addressed rather than, trying to better the world around you. So moving forward, it is not moving forward, it is not is to not view society as the sole problem, but one's own level of ability in recognizing the root of issues, not just the surface wounds that shaped it. As a result, to move to the next phase is to move to addressing the self as the problem, the microcosm of the whole of society. By becoming better, we can better serve to making society better. So again, we're fluctuating from external to internal, from selfish to selfless. Um, this time we see working on oneself becomes the held ideal. But again, we see it for the entirely different goals. It's not to benefit oneself. It becomes to benefit other people. I work on myself so I can help the rest of the world around me. So I had mentioned pain phases earlier. We're going to go into that now. So why do I call this and the upcoming phases pain phases? Because from here, it's not about comfort. It's not about what you want. It's not about what you need. It's about what needs to happen. This mind is of the individual or society as a whole. It requires the discomfort of changing your mind about a lot of things, such as growing as a person, society to dissolve outdated and fictitious social construct designed to divide us and keep us from engaging together fully and develop a society that benefits the individual, then make it up, allowing all to live as they deserve to be under the simple principle that they're fellow human beings. Very long sentence there, I know. But essentially, we all know society is not as it should be. We know that the system is broken. I don't think anybody is going to say, "Yeah, this system's awesome. I love like working a 9 to 5 job 5 days a week and still struggle to make ends meet." Who wants that, right? When we understand that there are these social constructs such as money, wealth, the economy, like the economy is real, but we base it off of a line that is really influenced by a handful of people. So it's like, what are these? So as a result of all this, comfort doesn't become an option. It becomes a need to make society fair and just. And through the pursuit of that, the gathering of knowledge, uncomfortable knowledge that shows us where, how, and why suffering is happening. It is not easy. Okay, as a white person, having to come to concept like terms with my own like I am where I am in society because of the sins of my ancestors, the things that they've done. And it's like that's unjust, it's unfair. And I have to recognize that, acknowledge that, and and not move forward, but help bring those that have been affected by that to become more equal um in all ways. Do 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 until the egalitarian society comes into being, the pain phases push to further understand, break down, and spread knowledge of how the individual and society could be doing and can be doing better. So to like basically, I know the green, like I said, as a hippie, but like the real people that are doing the actual work as a green, they're the ones that are going and like establishing communities, establishing systems like food kitchens to ensure that everybody can be equal and like not equal. Like it's not great that people have to rely on a soup kitchen, but it's better than being hungry. It requires work. It requires sacrifice to go out of your way to do these types of things for others at no benefit of yourself, just to make things a bit better. Next stage. So this is where things become out of most people's reach, and I will explain why. Phase 7 is yellow, which is relativistic. Yellow is part of what is labeled by its creators as the first of the second tier phases. So everything before this has been tier 1. Now we're on to tier 2. There's no tier 3 yet. Um, but this would also make it the second of the pain stages. In this phase, we see a return to the self internal focus to grow as an individual. This takes forms in many ways: creators of resources, writers of great literature, leaders of movements to better all things, not for personal political power, but simply for bettering the lives of all. Um, this phase can be limited in its scope as individuals within it. They see themselves as being pushed to grow above and go above and beyond by pushing to change society, not to benefit themselves, but to benefit others. It's self-focused, but self-sacrificing as a practice. Um, a lot of this would be, of course, breaking down social constructs, the ideas of like genders and social classes, the myth of race, stuff like that, to be like really like understand why all people are equal, but also how we've gone to a position where not all people are equal based on things that they can't even change. So are you here? Probably no. Statistically, most people are in the that are even here in this here would be in the blue to orange spectrum. Some here are even green. I would say that I would hope most Jedi would be into the green section. Um, but yellow is a stage beyond and is occasionally used as something that we can only tap into on occasion. We are currently still held back by society, but also we get a lot of like social contagion essentially. We can't comprehend this quite yet because we don't live in a society that benefits it. Um, However, there are yellow. I would say there is examples of people in yellow. I would say not popping to mind yet, but I do have an example of the next stage, which is insane. Um, it is because of this personal failings, limits, and on level of ability or scope that we have a limit. Like a big example of why I can't get to, like I know I've tapped into it on occasion. It is very painful. It really sucks because when you basically you got to think of it like almost like you have a concept of the entire world in your head and all the issues in it, but you know you have nothing, you have no way of solving it. And this is why I'm goth, because I realize the world is messed up and there's not much I can do about it beyond doing what I can, um, which is probably as much as we can get it. How do we move forward? So, firstly, be honest with yourself. Are you even here yet? Um, I know I'm not. I doubt anybody here is. So, moving on, this is all in theory. But in theory, the next phase is currently beyond our reach, entirely beyond our reach, mostly because the society we live in, the imagined barriers that are built between us, and often without our consent, much less our knowledge. There are barriers of entry for all people, and most of these things we don't even recognize or realize because they're not quite as obvious as things such as culture, like cultural boundaries, education boundaries, stuff like that. To move forward again is to go back to thinking external, namely to be able to actualize issues of the world in full and being able to harmonize great individuals as a collective. Basically, hold this yellow mindset, move beyond, but also find other people with that beyond mindset, bring them together and be able to actually change things. And unfortunately, we're not able to do that yet. This can this cannot just be your friends. If you think you have the greatest minds in your personal Facebook private chat, uh, wake up call. You don't. The greatest minds are unfortunately held back by their time. As a society, we move forward from this phase when we remove the roadblocks and make this harder, if not impossible, to achieve. So, wait, this next stage is currently impossible, and this is going to be something that you'll see me saying a lot. Capitalism is to blame. Um, because at this phase, we recognize and revile how the system known as capitalism profits off the honest labor of others while making it impossible for those providing that labor to achieve their true potential. So basically, think of it this way. If we want the best minds to do the jobs in the world, to like come together and fix the issues of the world, how are we going to do that if the best mind is maybe stuck doing as an Amazon delivery driver or maybe they got into a severe act. Maybe they were the greatest minds, but they got into a severe accident, and now they have to work their whole life to pay off the medical bills. Um, like this is why healthcare for all should be a thing because that's a hurdle removed. Boom. Or if they don't live in a home that can nurture their mind, and as a result, their mind gets lost to the sea of drugs, harm, or homelessness. I'm sure there have been some great minds that have just been they were just born in the wrong neighborhood and end up having like being pushed to do things. They get a criminal record, it holds them back in life, it holds them from getting education, stuff like that. So until these hurdles are removed, merely work within those and with those that are lucky enough to be able to be in a position to be worked with. So, like example, if Sir Isaac Newton had been born in the Amazon, would we have his laws of motion? Doubtful. He'd probably be spending his days bow fishing. Um, so more likely than not, his name would have been forgotten in history. But he was born white. He was born a man. He was born physically able, and such as he was afforded options that are unreachable to the others of his era. Another example, for anyone that has ever read Gulliver's Travels, it is a terrible book. I don't know why anybody likes it. It is a painful read. It is terribly written. Uh, it's bad. Um, but it was published by an author who was individually wealthy at a time when nobody could afford to publish books. So he just said, okay, well, I'll publish it myself. And he did. And as a result, it was one of the only books released that year. So people read it and it became a classic, despite being terrible. Um, but then so he had money and he had wealth and all that, so he was able to publish his book. But then you see a great mind like Vincent van Gogh. What? Go back. Vincent van Gogh, who was completely forgotten by his generation, and he was only really recognized as a great artist after he had passed away. Like it's unfortunate, but sometimes that happens where these great minds are literally lost to time. They're gone, and we can only recognize them after the fact. So if everyone was afforded equal opportunity, more great minds would rise, and thus the best minds for the jobs would be bettering the world together because they'd be able to reach out to each other, to be able to grow, and be able to incorporate everybody. Next stage, stage 8, turquoise, the global minded. So spoiler alert, you are not here. Nobody is. If anybody says otherwise, they're trying to sell you something. This might like because of barriers in place, nobody gets here. I do have one example, which is in the next slide. The turquoise mindset is that can exist when all is only that can exist when all minds walls are torn down. You are the world, and the world is you. But that does not simply mean that to just work on themselves. This is a return to community. Once again, we're going back to the community, but on a worldwide scope. They realize the entire world is dependent on each other. What happens in one country affects another, even in ways that we don't even see. And to like as Martin Luther King Jr. said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The global mind realizes there are injustices across the world that need to be addressed before we can have justice for all. Um, love of all and the ceaseless vigor to better it, directing an unceasing action to find and the source of all world problems, hurdles, and hindrances to equality for all, including all the world's residents. It doesn't matter if you don't like them. Like my neighbors, I'm not a big fan of them because they keep doing things in my backyard without my knowledge or consent. But I'd run into their house and pull them from their house, their beds if it was burning down because I know that they're not the most mobile in the world. A turquoise society would be an absolute utopia where all are served to the benefit, where all serve to benefit all. However, I can try to explain what this is all day long, but unfortunately, we can't really conceptualize it because nobody's here. I'm not here. You're not here. Nobody is. But the idea is, so on an individual scale, this would be somebody that can comprehend the entire world and try to better everything by sheer effort, like constant and unceasing effort. A turquoise society would just be wonderful because it'd be taught from a quite a young age that there wouldn't be these hurdles in place. Everybody from birth would have the equal outcome of all. They wouldn't be held back by stupid things like skin tone. Like, what is that? Like, oh no, my ancestors were born in this part of the world, and therefore society treats less, right? That's dumb. Why do we live in a society like that? So, how then am I going to explain this one to you all? Was an ex like how can I explain what a turquoise mindset could possibly even look like if nobody can get here? When I say nobody can get here, it's I don't like assigning things after the fact to people, like canonizing dead people and all that. However, I think everybody will agree with me on this person. And we're going to go on to that now. The late Steve Irwin. Literally, this is the only person I can think about that could possibly represent what a turquoise mind could be like in action. His sheer passion and active daily effort and love of that effort. He didn't just do it because it was a job for him. He loved everything he was doing to save wildlife and wildlife reserves. And it was such a monumental effort that he made during his life that his efforts continue to live years after his life. The wildlife reserve that his family continues to run, he bought all of that throughout his life with all the donations that he made, hundreds and hundreds of acres of wildlife and he's done and they fought so hard to continue to preserve it when governments tried to come in and be like, oh well, we want there's like oil or something underneath and like no, you can't come here because there's protected species here. um to so his monumental efforts lasted years after his death, to which he cared it came to while actively serving to save the wildlife in the area by by a scared animal that would be done. So basically, yeah, he died because he was trying to continue to save the world. He scared a stingray, got stabbed in the heart, and died. And it's so tragic that his life was cut so short because he could very likely still be alive today doing what he does. His love of life and healing the world just resonated. I sometimes when I'm sad, I just look up videos of Steve Irwin, and I just realize like this guy was probably the one of the greatest human beings to ever exist. Like maybe not the greatest mind out there, like definitely not like some sort of mega genius, but he understood a fundamental truth of the world that all things were supposed to be equal and that humans have devastated the world. And his effort has changed how all of us think about nature. It was it was day and night. His last outing was, according to his wife, going to be the last one for a bit. He was just so burnt out from all the media presentations, parades, movies, shows. He was going out to film that last thing where he ended up getting killed by the stingray. Um, and he had promised his wife, "Listen, I'm just going to take a break after this, but I need to get this one out. This is the last one, I promise." Which was probably a lie. He couldn't. Apparently, he couldn't even sleep properly. He saw being burned out by being a media star. He wanted to return to his roots more, being able to do direct action after being spending years of knowledge and promoting a love of nature publicly. He worked his mind and body ragged. All that knew him knew that he hated sleeping. Steve Irwin apparently was told many people he hated being asleep because he knew that it was time that he lost being able to protect nature. It was like he just understood that every moment that he wasn't doing something, something was happening that he could never take back. And that's so heartbreaking to know that he was just so ahead of his time that he was limited by what we could do. But in the end, Steve Irwin was just one man that all struggled to keep up with. He just always pushed from the front. He had a team with him that he always pushed to be their best. Um, but unfortunately, he was the brightest of the candle in the bunch. Um, his fire burned bright because he had a mission to do everything in his power to better the planet, to heal it, and to help all live in balance with it. He pulled so many people up with him to pursue his mission, building up everyone around him, and are still working hard to save his beloved animals. His wife, of course, being one of the primary examples of continuing his legacy long after his death. She was devastated by his loss, but still continued fighting to protect everything that he did, and even now his children are going forward and continue his legacy because they know that he I was watching an interview with him and his family, and the day he decided to have children is because he went to his wife and he's like, we need to have a kid. And she's like, why? Wait, why do we have to have a kid? She's like, because what are we doing? What am I gonna like? I'm doing all this to leave like a better world for my children, but we don't have children yet. We need to have a children. So they had children. And his children realized, yeah, well, we have to do the same. We have to leave a better world for our children. So this is only one possible example of a turquoise. I would not assign it to him because he is not alive, and therefore I wouldn't build like. And I never got to meet him personally. We only have the what he put forward and his example. I think it's very likely that he was this mindset because he didn't do this for personal profit. Like, as he said, every penny that he got that didn't have to go towards his direct expenses went right back into buying wildlife because he realized how important that was. But he was limited by his time, even his own personal time, dying quite young, but also just in his point of history. Unfortunately, even after he's passed and his excellent example, we see people still trying to burn down the Amazon rainforest to make room for more soy fields because people want soy sauce, which is just, it's unfortunate. Then next stage, this is the one that came out after I had studied it the first time, coral. And so far, there are no details on this, so we can't even go into it. What can this look like? No idea. No idea. It's a proposed one. I believe Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi has been the one to propose it. So we might be seeing more information on this in the next few years while they're continue to work on it. So we're going to go into something else because throughout all of this, I I am hoping some of you have picked up on something on all of this. And there are some legitimate criticisms for against spiral dynamics, and we're going to go into that now. So, one of the known issues of spiral dynamics can spur from, again, societal issues. Like any model of advancement, there are those that would use it to benefit themselves. The self-proclaimed enlightened ones asking for donations, the day one masters, the people that think, "Oh, I could definitely be a turquoise." No, I can't. Unfortunately, not. Just not yet. Maybe in a couple hundred years, probably properly, but not anytime soon. As a result, this method of evolutionary psychology, sociology is often viewed as a cult because it's like, oh, there's stages that you can move up. And some people do use it, unfortunately, to benefit themselves. Be like, oh, if you pay for my classes, I'll help you move up. It doesn't work like that. This is something that each person has to come to individually, often without much instruction, just do their own there's no push towards the ends. This is just where you can measure yourself and you can better understand yourself and how you can move forward to a new stage if you feel like the stage you're in is not helping you or not matching with what your observations of the world are. Personally, I'm going to say that on the basis of cults, that correlation does not equal causation. It's more likely that these cults form when they're still in the blue to orange mindset and trying to pretend their way up. So usually we see these cults being used as a money-making scam by a leader. So obviously an orange type personality that's gathering their group, but also using them to profit, or taking advantage of their followers, which would be blue, because these blue people are coming in trying to just look for something to better themselves. And they end up falling prey to somebody who wants to make money or whatever. So my precaution for you is to be cautious with those thinking that this is a path to enlightenment. It is not. This is just evolutionary psychology and sociology. Enlightenment is just psychology that we don't understand yet, but still be cautious with any on this model claiming to be that this model is a path to being a god or that they are the Messiah. At the beginning of this presentation, I had mentioned actualize.org, which does long form content on this. And I do recommend you go watch his videos on this. But if you go into his other videos, he goes a bit wackadoo, pushing for using psychedelics, that everyone's their own personal messiah, this whole thing. But basically, in the end, like over the course of years, he began to believe that he's becoming a god. That's like, oh, okay, whoopsie doo, no, you weren't. And that's when you realize he's on a harmful line. But his videos are still actually quite good on spiral dynamics. It's really the only videos I could find on spiral dynamics properly. But really, these are just general good life lessons for you to be able to go through. So it is always so it is sorry, my as it always is, use this model and be aware of its critiques. Okay. Be aware that some people will look at this and be like, ah, this is a cult. And it can be. Okay. I'm not going to deny this. This could end up be like doing a cult thing. Don't follow anybody. Like I'm presenting this as an opportunity for training. I cannot judge anybody here. Nobody can tell you where you are on the scale. This is where you have to go into, find it for yourself. Don't try to assign anybody else its issues. Like be like, oh, this is because it's just harmful. If you go around and be like, oh, well, you're a red type personality because you did this, that's just insulting. Like it takes away their personal liability to like for you to assign things to them. This is for you. But you can also look at it on a societal scale, not out through individuals, but on a whole. And that's why we see that orange and blue seem to be the predominant majority, where it's about money and like religions and all that. Still, we're not on a phase where we're trying to make everything better for everybody. We're trying, and we're like I think we're making steps towards it, but sometimes it's just done as like rainbow capitalism type thing, unfortunately. This form this the spiral dynamics isn't perfect, but I found it personally helpful to move forward myself, finding what is holding me back and how to identify how I've been cultured throughout my life so that I could break free from it all. But manage expectations and remind yourself of your reality often. We are Jedi, and we do this for the best. We do this all with the best interest, with the interest of bettering the world in mind. We don't do this for ourselves, which is why I don't think Jedi can be in the red. Um, it does make sense for Jedi to be in blue, orange, green, yellow, all of those. Red, probably not. I understand why, like, because they got like orange bettering themselves, but their idea is using power and money to make the world that they want to see. I'm sure the first Jedi to make a proper temple by themselves will probably be an orange because they'll go out of their way to like assemble their team, get money, make the world they want to see, which could be a real life temple. So it's not a bad thing. It's just where they are. So that really concludes the presentation. Um, I hope you learn. I know it's this is a very like long, jarbled text of information. I think this is something that I studied during my apprenticeship. I think it's quite fascinating to go through. So, any questions?